holding it in. Let's end this with a bang!
Every week, I wait for the show to unleash Apocalypse alongside his Horseman of Death Gambit, and every week, the narrative teases me just a little longer. Well, the saga continues into the 7th episode, and with only 2 episodes remaining this season, I hope we get some real action as much as the side quests of the X-Men are entertaining. After the threat posed by Danger in the previous episode, the X-Men face a new crisis situation this time around, and the episode titled Strange Land, Savage Heart gives us the philosophical debate. Of course, it still ends with a bang, announcing that we're closer to seeing Apocalypse alongside a twisted version of Gambit. For me, the biggest takeaway from this episode, aside from the spiritual and moral dilemma, are the several cameos and references to some of the classics from the comic books. In this video, I'll explore every hidden detail, major plot point, and reference in the episode, and there will be some major spoilers along the way. A tragedy to start things off. Yeah, the episode might not pack some jaw-dropping apocalypse-level action, but the story's so intense and gripping that it almost feels like a movie packed into 30 minutes. To start things off, we have a tragedy that changes everything, and this is technically a flashback. We're taken to the day of the Janosha massacre, and Colossus and his sister are caught up in the slaughter as the Sentinels attack. Illyana saves a few mutant lives, but she's no match for the mighty Sentinels. Colossus loses his sister Illyana in the attack, and it's a defining moment that changes him as he watches helplessly. I think it's similar to the crisis faced by many mutants who had to deal with the challenge of making peace with the humans who largely want them dead. If the massacre in Janosha wasn't enough, the death of Illyana definitely pushes Colossus over the edge, and he joins the Acolytes in what he believes is justice. The consequence of that is what we see in this episode. A hate-filled Graydon Creed running for president. The mutants can't catch a break, can they? Certainly not with the likes of Graydon Creed running around free, waving their freedom of speech flag to spread hate against the mutants. This time around, the bigot's running for president, and his speech is enough to instigate a mass disgust. His rally has gathered a horde of similar extremists, and it seems like running the Friends of Humanity group wasn't enough for this hate-filled propagandist. However, his speech is interrupted as the Acolytes of Magneto attack. His guards don't stand a chance against the combined attack of the likes of Exodus, Colossus, and the others, and Graydon Creed is taken captive. An ultimatum for humanity and a challenge for the X-Men. The news soon reveals all about the attack on Graydon Creed's rally, and the Acolytes are described as a cult of radical extremists devoted to the late Master of Magnetism and his vision. The leader of the Acolytes, Exodus, lays out his terms. Every mutant currently held by X-Factor must be released and remanded to Acolyte custody. If the demand isn't met, Creed will be assassinated for his crimes against mutants. As you can imagine, the stakes are incredibly high, especially with only 24 hours given as a deadline. If anything goes wrong, this could trigger a large-scale human-mutant conflict, and, as expected, Professor Xavier steps up with a solution. The Acolytes are a nice touch. I can't appreciate the writers enough for the clever twists that they introduce in some familiar stories. For instance, the Acolytes of Magneto are shown to be led by Exodus. Previously, in X-Men the Animated Series, we saw Fabian Cortez lead the charge, but given that Cortez was destroyed by Apocalypse, there's a new leader and with a new purpose. What adds brilliance to the narrative is that Exodus is the same as Graydon Creed, the man that he seeks to punish for his crimes. Much like Creed, he too spreads hatred. While Creed spreads hate against mutants, Exodus fuels hate against humanity. Adding Colossus to the team is another nice touch because we all know him to be a sensitive and reasonable guy, and the only reason he's here among these extremists is because the loss of his sister has affected him so deeply. X-Corp springs into action. I knew that the X-Corp announcement wasn't just a passing cameo, and in this episode, we see how Professor Xavier intends to navigate his forces. After the crisis of Graydon Creed held hostage by the Acolytes, Professor Xavier's quick to send his new team to remedy the situation. Of course, Dr. Cooper's still on his back over the jurisdiction of the X-Corp and the X-Men, but this is a more confident and straightforward Xavier who just says that his X-Men are already on their way, and Cooper's men wouldn't like where they were headed. The whole team is there as they head to the Savage Land in their aircraft. We have Polaris, Bishop, Rogue, Beast, and Nightcrawler as they go to rescue Graydon Creed, a man who surely doesn't deserve saving. The dilemma of Nightcrawler. Honestly, this is one of my favorite X-Men, even though he's criminally underrated. At least the show gives him his due, and in this episode, where he truly stands out. To start things off, this is a complicated situation for Nightcrawler because Graydon Creed happens to be his stepbrother. After all that Nightcrawler has endured over the years, including being abandoned by his mother Mystique, he still has a heart of gold, and his theory is that nobody is beyond saving. He hopes to make peace with the situation at hand and also save his brother in the process, and thus he goes along as part of the X-Corp headed to the Savage Land. Beast's prediction quickly turns out to be true. As you would expect, Beast is the one piloting the aircraft as the X-Men head to the Savage Land, and he gives them a quick rundown of the way the place works. This is a place frozen in time with numerous threats waiting to kill anyone daring to intrude. Rogue barely makes a joke about Beast's ominous warnings when they get attacked. Beast detects a familiar energy field that's similar to the signature established when Mr. Sinister attacked, and Bishop feels an immediate radiation surge running through his body. Before long, they're hit by a surface-to-air missile and the craft starts to go down. Rogue discovers that her powers aren't working, and it's the same with everyone else. And to make matters worse, Bishop falls through the wrecked aircraft. Polaris jumps in after him and barely saves the fall with a parachute for them for a soft landing. But the Savage Land is far from safe. The T-Rex cameo and the spark between Bishop and Polaris. Is it just me, or did y'all notice some chemistry between Bishop and Polaris? I mean, they said during the flight that they're familiar with each other's files, and the way Polaris jumps in after him is pretty commendable. Also, the landing is adorable as Polaris lands right on top of Bishop. Of course, this is no place for romance, and they quickly find out when a distant thud on the ground grows nearer, and then a T-Rex walks right past them. I mean, this is the Savage Land, and it wouldn't be complete without a decent dinosaur cameo. But Bishop is not alright. The energy surge that hit the jet earlier is running inside his body without him being able to release it. Mr. Sinister's old inhibitor tower at work. We quickly find out what made the X-Men powerless all of a sudden. On the ground, Polaris tells Bishop about Mr. Sinister's old inhibitor tower that's probably been rebooted by the Acolytes to suppress all their mutant powers. But for Bishop, time is running out, and they have to find a fix soon. As of now, they have to find the others because they landed far away from the crash site, and the mission is just getting started. Colossus rescues the crashed X-Men. Bishop and Polaris might be out there in the woods, but others like Rogue, Beast, and Nightcrawler crash land with the jet. They're rescued from the wreckage by none other than Colossus himself. I think it's a nice little detail that reinforces the fact that he's basically a nice guy with no intent for malice. Nightcrawler's his old friend and he hasn't forgotten their camaraderie. However, when the X-Men tell him why they're there, he simply refuses to hand over Graydon Creed. Even Nightcrawler's pleas fall on deaf ears, and in order to seek an audience with the captive, Nightcrawler gives an interesting proposition. He offers to be allowed to see the place so that he can have an opportunity to have a change of heart. Of course, this would be a huge boost for the Acolytes if the X-Men approve of their ideology and Colossus agrees. The philosophy of life in the Savage Land. You can't blame someone like Colossus for following an extremist like Exodus because of the life offered in the Savage Land. It's just what mutants would seek. It's a simple life with food, water, power, and simple concerns. Colossus talks about how Exodus found him in a dark state and managed to give him purpose. Beast is quick to remind him that his sister would never have been okay with him joining the Acolytes, but Colossus simply dismisses the suggestion by saying that we could never know about the desires of the dead. Now, the only downside to this is that Exodus is as filled with hate as Graydon Creed, and it will soon be Judgment Day for them both. Graydon Creed remains defiant even in captivity. Finally, the X-Men are led to meet the captive Graydon Creed, and the meeting goes just as you'd expect. Creed finds the compassionate sermons of his stepbrother meaningless, and his hate for mutants is written all over his face. As despicable and horrible as a man might be, he still has the guts to stand on his own twisted principles, even when he's faced with death. But Nightcrawler remains strong on his own ideals of forgiveness and acceptance, and he demands a fair trial, which is a memorable scene in this episode. Exodus tempted with overwhelming odds for a fair trial. Nightcrawler's keen on a fair trial for his brother to determine if he's really beyond all hope of redemption. Now, this is a bold demand, and even Exodus acknowledges the same, given that the trial will be held on the Savage Land. Nightcrawler has the power of faith and he believes that his brother's worth redeeming, and he hands out a proposition that's too good to refuse. He promises to join the Acolytes if Exodus wins, and this will be a signal for mutants across the world to the fact that even an X-Man could be convinced to join their cause. He just wants Colossus to preside over the trial, and Exodus agrees. Polaris and Bishop come up with an idea. Away from all the courtroom drama, Polaris and Bishop are having a fun time of exploring the forests of the Savage Land. They come across the wreckage of their jet, but with no signs of the X-Men. Bishop simply gathers his guns. They realize that they need to destroy the inhibitor tower to get their powers back if they have a chance in rescuing the missing X-Men and a captive Graydon Creed. Polaris has this twinkle in her eye which immediately tells me that she's thought of an absurd idea, and we'll soon see it unfold. The dramatic trial begins. Colossus is the judge, and Exodus and Nightcrawler get the opportunity to plead their case, starting with Exodus. I have to say he makes a pretty compelling case for himself, pointing out all the anti-mutant activities that Graydon Creed has indulged in. He reminds everyone that Creed was responsible for the Friends of Humanity group. He created a virus to kill mutants, and even tried to frame a mutant for killing the president. He argues that the humans would never punish him for his crimes, which makes it the responsibility of the mutants to bring him to justice. Nightcrawler takes a very different direction. Instead of trying to argue Creed's crimes, he explores the root cause of this mutant hate. He reveals how Creed was mistreated by his father Sabretooth for having no powers, and how he never received love from his mutant parents. Now, if you ask me, Nightcrawler might make sense, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that Creed is guilty. I mean, you can't argue that a serial killer is innocent because his family mistreated him as a child, right? This wouldn't hold in a court of law, but it seems like Colossus is hesitant in delivering his decision, and this is where things go south. The final conflict with the Acolytes. Exodus probably senses that the verdict isn't going to go in his favor, and he doesn't even wait for it. He attacks Colossus straight away, and he nearly kills him before Bishop and Polaris intervene. As it turns out, their grand plan was to ride flying dinosaurs and shoot at the inhibitor tower enough to destroy it. Once it's done, the X-Men have their powers back, and it becomes a fair fight. I particularly love the duel between Exodus and Nightcrawler, where they both seem evenly matched until Nightcrawler outwits him and has him cornered. However, Creed pulls off another one of his nasty moves. He picks up a fallen laser gun and shoots Exodus dead. He even tries to hold Nightcrawler hostage in order to escape, but Polaris is about to kill him when Nightcrawler teleports away with his brother just in time. Is it justice? I really like how the episode establishes that there's nothing to support the evil of Graydon Creed. He's too far gone to be changed, and even Nightcrawler realizes this. He teleports him to an icy terrain and leaves him there to his fate. He finally knows that Creed cannot be redeemed, and it all works out for the X-Men because Xavier's promise of retrieving Creed stays true. He's later found alive, and Dr. Cooper has nothing to say about the flawless mission. However, if you ask me whether Creed got justice, I'd have to disagree. He definitely deserved to be punished, and not just because he killed Exodus, but because his stance against mutants hasn't changed a single bit. Nevertheless, X-Corp has its first victory, and I'm sure there will be many more to follow, now that the ultimate danger is looming large. The big reveal by Team X-Force. The story ends and we get the teaser that serves as a reminder of what's about to come next. Cable and his X-Force team finally locate the secret lair of Apocalypse under the Parthenon in Athens, Greece. The only problem is that they've arrived a little too late. Also, what they discover is rather unexpected. As they explore the place, they discover the shriveled up and decaying skeletal remains of Apocalypse and a single playing card left behind. Now, I don't need to tell you that the card obviously belongs to Gambit, who's already been transformed into one of Apocalypse's horsemen. But what's the deal with Apocalypse's dead body here? Is Apocalypse dead? Well, of course he isn't, because such a big event wouldn't be taking place off screen. Also, the hardened comic book fans know that there's actually a precedent for this. In the comics, there have been times when Apocalypse has been seemingly killed, although none of his deaths have been permanent. For instance, in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, Magneto kills him, but on every other occasion, he's returned to fight another day. We do know that Apocalypse is powered by celestial technology, and he could rearrange his molecular structure to resurrect himself. How do you even kill such an individual? What seems likely here is that he's taken over another host and abandoned this physical body. He's done so in the comics with Cyclops and in the Age of Apocalypse. And in Apocalypse the 12 narratives, we've seen Apocalypse make a similar attempt. Jean even revealed his rotting body beneath the armor. And I would say that what we see in this episode is slightly similar to this. Maybe he just found a new host and the attack will come soon enough. But there are some fan theories speculating if a resurrected Gambit might have killed Apocalypse, but I wouldn't put my money on that if I was a betting man. The grand finale is being set up, and I think Season 2's done a fantastic job so far. Even though this episode was a separate story in itself, it never felt like the continuity was being hurt. Such was the quality of the writing. I just hope that the next episode drags things back to what is the biggest threat faced by humans and mutants alike, the mighty Apocalypse and his horsemen, as they try to take over this timeline. I'd love to hear your take on this episode in the comments below, and also share your views on the unlikely discovery by X Factor where they spot the corpse of Apocalypse. If you liked this video, please hit like, subscribe to our channel, and make sure to ring that notification bell so when we get more X-Men content, you find out first. Stay safe, have a great day, and as always, stay marvelous.